Keep Walters in mind if you're looking for a place to book a private event in DC. Visit waltersdc.com/private events for more information.
Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V20 6-tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Bases are loaded. Nobody out. The pitch to Ruiz. Swung on. Line drive left center field. Long run for Thomas. Way back. He can't get there. It's one hop to the fence. Garcia scores from third. Bell around third coming home. Hassel around third. Held up by Ricky Gutierrez. And into second with a booming double to left center field is Keibert Ruiz. His 10th double of the year. First 5 Nationals in the lineup are all in the dugout having scored a run. Runners on second and third and still nobody out. Nationals 5 and the Diamondbacks nothing. Now the pitch. Swinging a ground ball up the middle. Could be 2. Marte will flip to Perdomo. Really to first. Not in time. And so Abrams scores and the Nationals are in double digits. Garcia picks up his 3rd RBI of the first inning. Wood is erased at second on the fielder's choice. Abrams twice hit by a pitch. Scores twice in the inning. And it's now the Nationals 10 and the Diamondbacks nothing.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Chase Field in Phoenix. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. The Nats, over a stretch of 3 losses in 4 games, May 23rd through the 27th, totaled just 6 runs. The Nats in 4 games since are 4-0, and during that stretch have totaled 38 runs. Late night on Saturday night, an 11-7 win at the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 2 of a 3-game series. The Nats scored 10 runs in the top of the first. Did allow an 11-0 fourth-inning lead to get trimmed to 11-7 off a 5-run Diamondback 6. But the Nats have clinched a winning trip out west, now are 4-1 on this 6-game trip out west. And the Nats in MLB's 2025 regular season now are just 2 games below 500, 28-30. The Nats in the month of May 2025 went 15-12 despite a 7-game losing streak. Think about that. This is the only Nationals podcast for which there is a new episode for the morning after every Nats regular season game day, weekday, weekend, afternoon game, late night game. Doesn't matter. We're with you. And it's good to have you with us. You can find us on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email the program natschatpodcast@gmail.com. We, on Saturday evening prior to the game, got significant Nats news. The Nats announced having designated reliever Jorge Lopez for assignment. We'll get to that, but the story of your National Saturday was this 10-run first inning, an all-time inning. The Nats in the top of the first scored 10 runs on 9 hits, 1 walk, and 3 hit by pitches, 2 of which were drawn by C.J. Abrams, who became just the 8th player since 1969 to be hit by 2 pitches in the same inning of a regular season game. Abrams for the game as the Nats starting shortstop and number 1 batter went 1 for 3 with a single and 3 hit by pitches. The Nats scoring 10 runs in the top of the first marked the highest scoring regular season first inning for the Nats since the franchise moved to Washington, D.C. in the 2004-2005 offseason. The Nats in their 10-run first per the Elias Sports Bureau matched the longest regular season start of game streak in MLB's expansion era. That's since 1961 for reaching base safely. The Nats began the game by reaching base in each of the team's first 11 plate appearances. This was unreal how the Nats began this game. The Diamondback starting pitcher, Brandon fought. He fought and he lost. He allowed 8 runs without recording an out. Mark, the Nats offense is alive and well.
I'll tell you what, Al, if we're going to record a podcast at 2:15 a.m. on the East Coast on a Sunday morning, at least that's the time where you and Tim are right now, you might as well make it about something historic, right? And we got history in this game. You just outlined it. It is a remarkable solo inning of baseball, the likes of which you just don't see at this level. I'm thinking to myself watching it, this is what you expect in Little League, or, maybe an early season college baseball game between like an SEC powerhouse and some Division III team that they're facing to start off their season. You just don't have that kind of lopsided matchup that we saw in this game. And I know it wound up being a lot closer in the end because the Dbacks are, in fact, a good major league team. But it was striking and almost comical at a certain point as every single batter that stepped up there kept getting on base, kept the rally going. No one wanted to be the first one to make it out. It finally was Nathaniel Lowe, the 12th batter of the game, finally made the first out of the game. It was just stunning in every possible way. And it felt like this culmination of what we've seen over the last 4 nights out here on the West Coast. It keeps getting better and better the way they are scoring runs. They've now scored 9+ runs in 4 straight games. I didn't think I'd be looking up that stat in the first inning. I thought it might take a while for them to get there. No, they were there within 30 minutes of this game.
And that streak is significant. The Nats scoring at least 9 runs in each of 4 consecutive games. That matches the longest regular season streak of the team scoring at least 9 runs in franchise history. The Montreal Expos in June 1995 scored at least 9 runs in each of 4 consecutive games. The Nats for the game, 11 runs, 13 hits, 3 walks, 5 hit by pitches in a season in which the Nats have issued so many hit by pitches. The Nats in this game late night on Saturday night did their share of taking the hit by pitches. Like I said, 3 were taken by C.J. Abrams. The Nats in this game, 9 for 16 with runners in scoring position. I tell you, if you go through these last 4 games, the Nats scoring all these runs, the Nats have been so efficient with runners in scoring position. The 13 hits were a triple, 5 doubles, and 7 singles. It is kind of funny. The Nats had this offensive eruption, didn't hit a single homer, and no player had like a monster game. This was about as even-steven of an offensive production distribution as you'll ever see. Each of the Nats starting 9 players had at least 1 hit. Each of the Nats starting 9 players each scored at least 1 run, but nobody had more than 2 hits. Nobody had more than 3 RBI. Nobody scored more than 2 runs. It was like everyone got in on the act, but like nobody did too much in this game.
It was like a Davey Martinez dream come true. Everybody went up there and had the same good quality approach and made good contact, yes, but didn't hit the ball out of the park. Dalen Lyle tried his best to finally hit his first career home run. He came so close. He hit a ball 423 feet to straightaway center field, and it still wasn't enough because of the high wall here. And then he hit another one to right field later in the game and settled for a triple. But other than that, it was just good, solid contact singles and doubles. And as you said, some hit by pitches as well. But you hear this all the time from teams say, pass the baton. You don't have to be the hero yourself. Get on base, pass it on to the next guy. They did that to perfection in this game. And, those first 3 games in this streak of offense have featured a lot of home runs, and that they could do it this time without any of them and score 11 runs in the first 2 innings without benefit of a home run, and literally every single member of the lineup contributing to it. That's a pretty remarkable thing.
And unlike in previous recent seasons in which if the Nats had a big offensive game, they probably did so because they had a bunch of infield hits and scoring on errors and, stolen bases and manufacturing runs. Yes, the Nats didn't homer in this game, but a lot of doubles, some walks. Like, this was a big boy offensive performance for sure, even without the benefit of a home run. We've been talking about how the bottom half of the Nats lineup lately has been so much better. This game, a prime example of this recent trend. The Nats numbers 6 through 9 batters, Robert Hassel III, Keibert Ruiz, Jose Tena, and Dalen Lyle, a combined 7 for 17 with a triple, 3 doubles, 3 singles, 2 walks, and a hit by pitch. Like we said, everyone got in on the act, but man, the bottom half of the Nats lineup lately has been really good.
And that's how you sustain rallies. That's how you get big crooked numbers up there in any particular inning. And just think back, it's not that long ago, a week or 2 ago, and you would look at their 6, 7, 8, 9 hitters and their batting averages and their OPSs, and you'd say, boy, this is a very top-heavy lineup. And it doesn't feel that way anymore. And I think a lot of the credit goes to Hassel and Lyle, the 2 kids who've been thrown in there and have more than held their own here so far. I think a lot of credit, of course, goes to Josh Bell, who has completely resurrected his season on this road trip. And even Keibert Ruiz, he finally got moved down in the lineup. He wasn't hitting cleanup for them. This one, he batted 7th. And what did he do? He had a 2-run double in the first inning, another single in the third inning. I mean, they were getting this from everyone. And, C.J. Abrams, as we had talked about, really wasn't much of the production the previous 3 nights. He didn't do a lot necessarily with the bat in this game, but he got on base 4 times because he was hit by pitch 3 times in the first 6 innings, including twice in the first inning. I know it was probably painful for him to go through that, but talk about setting the table as a leadoff hitter and giving the rest of your guys an opportunity to do some damage. That you couldn't ask for any more than that.
Absolutely not. If you're curious about James Wood, he in this game as an starting left fielder and number 2 batter, 2 for 6 with an RBI single and another single. And he added outfield assist. Good to see him have an outfield assist. I know that came later in the game, but a nice defensive moment for James Wood in this game.
That was a huge throw at a point when that game was teetering on the brink of disaster there. I don't know what the Diamondbacks are doing, waving a runner around down 4 runs and taking that kind of chance, but it was a perfect throw from Wood and a great tag by Ruiz. And, to see him contributing in that way, we know that defense hasn't been his number one calling card here so far. To see him do that could be a boost of confidence, I think, for James Wood. And this was on the verge. I mean, I was looking up late in this game, what's the record for the biggest comeback in Major League history? And the answer is 12. Cleveland did it to Seattle in the early 2000s, and they were 1 away from being in that territory in this game. And it was truly one big swing away from this being an absolute disaster of a game. Instead, that part's kind of a footnote. The 10-run top of the first, everything they did offensively early on becomes the story of this game.
To put a capper on the offense, so the Nats, as we record this in the early morning hours of Sunday, June 1st, are up to 11th in the majors in runs, 264. The Nats are 15th out of 30 major league teams in team OPS 713. Are the Nats a good offensive team, or at least a pretty good offensive team? What do you think right now is the appropriate label for this Nats offense? It's been such a Jekyll and Hyde offense like we've talked about. There have been these maddening stretches where you say, man, this team is terrible offensively. And now you have what we have right now, which is, man, this team is outstanding offensively. What do you think is the proper description of the 2025 Nationals offense?
I think it's a promising offensive team. We see when it all clicks, they can be really good. We just need to see this happen consistently. Now, yes, the last 4 nights have been tremendously consistent, but we need to see, maybe not to this extent, but just more of those, 4 or 5 run games instead of those nights where they're just swinging at everything and, getting a starter through the 6th inning on 62 pitches and a lot of ground balls and weak contact and no walks. We've had that conversation too many times. They just need to sustain this a little bit more. And then I think we can talk about this being an actual good hitting lineup. But I put out the stat before the game, and I haven't had a chance to update it here at the end of the night. You said they're 11th in the major leagues in runs scored. Among the teams that they've scored more runs than, the Mets, the Padres, the Astros, the Blue Jays. Those are some teams that you would expect to have big offenses. And they entered the day 13th in the majors in home runs, only 1 behind the Phillies and the Mets. Talk about 2 of the big power hitting teams in baseball. Think of the big bats in those 2 lineups. And then entering this day, the Nats were only 1 behind both of them in home runs. I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams predicted that back on opening day.
No, absolutely not. It has been one of the great encouraging things about this season from a team standpoint, the uptick in homers and the overall offensive production here. It's hard to be displeased with it. Baseball is a funny sport, right? But there are so many games, you can't get too caught up in any one particular stretch. You really do have to have a maturity about you to where you take a step back and you survey things from 30,000 feet as opposed to getting just swallowed up by, the day in, day out grind of the season. And if you look at this thing, big picture, overall output for this Nats offense, it has been much more good than bad so far this season.
Life as a small business owner, everything is your problem and there aren't enough hours in the day. That's where LinkedIn Jobs, and by proxy Nats Chat, are here to help. For those crucial hires that you absolutely can't whiff on, turn to LinkedIn Jobs. Simply post your job and LinkedIn will take it from there, making sure it gets in front of the properly qualified candidates who are searching themselves. Find out why more than 2.5 million small business owners have turned to LinkedIn Jobs to grow their staff. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/natschat. That's linkedin.com/natschat to post your jobs for free. LINKEDIN.com/NATSCHAT. Terms and conditions apply.
"15 pitches, 5 strikes. Breaking ball, line to left field. That's going to be a base hit. Wood has it on a hop. Throw's going to go in toward the plate. Throw to the plate. Tagged by Ruiz. He is out! On a 3-hopper to the plate, James Wood guns down Pavin Smith. What a throw by Wood. Had some hops, but had some steam on it. And picks up his second outfield assist of the year.
Well, the Nats pitching in this 11-7 win at the Arizona Diamondbacks late night on Saturday night. So Michael Soroka was the Nats starting pitcher. He officially allowed 4 runs in 5 1/3 innings. He gave up 6 hits, which were a home run, a double, and 4 singles. He issued a walk. He recorded 3 strikeouts. He did throw a lot of strikes, 94 pitches, 64 strikes, just 30 balls. Soroka began his outing with 3 perfect innings, but he in the bottom of the 4th gave up a 2-out, 2-run homer by Josh Naylor to right field, and Soroka in a 5-run Diamondback 6 was charged with 2 runs. And speaking of that 5-run Diamondback 6, Jackson Rutledge, he officially allowed 3 runs in 2/3 of an inning. You know, Rutledge has been good as a reliever, but he's had some bad outings for sure, and this was a really rough outing. Rutledge in the Diamondbacks 5-run 6 faced 5 batters, but got just 2 outs. He over his first 3 batters gave up a 1-out, 2-run triple, a 1-out RBI infield single, and a 1-out, 2-run homer, trimming the Nats' lead from 11-2 to 11-7. Jose A. Ferrer did toss a scoreless bottom of the 7th, despite issuing what else? A leadoff hit by pitch. And Cole Henry tossed 2 scoreless innings. So good to see that from Henry. Nats relievers for this game, 3 runs in 3 2/3 innings. And it was, in fact, the case that Kyle Finnegan was not available. Is that correct?
Kyle Finnegan was not available, and I think a few other guys were not available either. They had to cobble this thing together. You saw Cole Henry, despite throwing 21 pitches in the 8th inning and needing that great throw from James Wood to get out of a bases-loaded jam, he came back for the 9th. Now, Andrew Chafin was warming just in case, but they wanted to stay away from him. They didn't want him facing more than a couple batters. Finnegan, not available. We're going to get to Jorge Lopez, obviously not available because he's no longer a member of the team. This was set up all along to be a dangerous late inning situation. And it's why, in spite of that early offense, this was always a little bit on shaky ground in this game for them because of what their pitching situation was. I want to go back to Soroka here real quick because I don't want to lose sight of this. And he acknowledged this and said he's getting tired of having to talk about the same thing every time he pitches. He gets off to a great start. He feels like he pitched really well. And then he looks up at the end of the day and he's given up 4 runs. He knows it. He's got to finish these starts better. And, for 3 innings, he was electric. He took that 10-run lead and said, I'm coming right after you. 9 up, 9 down, 36 pitches. He wanted to be giving them more than that on this night, knowing that the bullpen wasn't in great shape. He knows that's that next step he's got to clean up. I think we would both agree. You just watch him pitch and you think to yourself, this guy's been pretty good. But the stats do not look good because he is giving up runs late. He's handing over inherited runners to relievers who are not stranding them on base, and it's affecting his ERA as well. But he really wants to be counted on to get through 6, especially on a night like this when they have such a big lead and all of a sudden it becomes a close game.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it feels like Soroka has been harmed big time by inherited runners being allowed to score. And I think that's part of this dynamic of he looks like he's pitched a lot better than the numbers would say. I mean, the numbers are not pretty at this point for him so far here with the Nats. He's giving him a chance every time he pitches. But yeah, it does feel like every time it's the same thing. He exits the game with runners on base. Those runners end up scoring. And what had looked like a pretty good start ends up not looking like such a good start when you look at the final line. So with Jorge Lopez, the Nats on Saturday evening announcing having designated reliever Jorge Lopez for assignment and announcing having recalled reliever Eduardo Salazar from AAA Rochester. So Salazar is back. What we have had over these last few weeks is really nothing short of a purge of this bullpen when you think about all of the guys now who have been cut loose. And Salazar was part of that purge with him being demoted to AAA Rochester. But Lucas Sims gone, Colin Poche gone. Now Jorge Lopez gone. The Nats this past January 11th announced having agreed with Lopez as a free agent on a one-year contract, which reportedly was worth $3 million. Jorge Lopez for the Nats in this regular season, 26 games, 24 and 2/3 innings, an ERA of 6.57, a whip of 1.297, a record of 6-0. So the record ultimately did not do enough to keep Jorge Lopez from being DFA'd. The Nats DFA'd Lopez 1 year and 1 day to the day that the New York Mets DFA'd Jorge Lopez, May 30th, 2024, off him on the previous day, throwing his glove into the stands following an ejection. We've talked about that over these last few days of what happened with Lopez on May 29th, 2025. 1 year to the day of him tossing the glove into the stands. Lopez in the Nats 9-3 10-inning win at the Seattle Mariners late night this past Thursday night allowed 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning, and it was very telling after the game. Davey Martinez in an exchange with Mark saying that, yeah, Lopez's emotions got the best of him. And Mark, I thought it was very telling that Davey, during his pregame session with you guys on Saturday evening, flat out said the Nats were not the right fit for Jorge Lopez.
Sometimes, places are not the right fit, and I don't think this was the right fit for him.
What do you think Davey meant by that?
Yeah, that one was open to a lot of interpretation. And I think what you've got there is a reliever who has bounced around a lot in recent years. And he's had some success, but he's also had some struggles. You mentioned what happened in New York. And a guy who, look, he's just kind of a different personality. It's not good or bad. I'm not going to say anything like that. But somebody who on the surface comes across as really soft-spoken, doesn't interact with teammates a whole lot. And yet there are times when he's on the mound that you see this emotion just burst out of him, and not in a good way. And think back to the game in Pittsburgh. I know he didn't intentionally throw at Andrew McCutchen, but he did end up getting ejected from that game and then suspended because of it. And then you have this game in Seattle the other night where he clearly was unhappy with bad calls from Andy Fletcher, the home plate umpire, but couldn't let it go. And you had Davey going out to the mound to try to calm him down, and that didn't work. He ends up giving up a couple of runs, can't finish the inning. I think it got to a point that the Nationals said, this isn't worth it anymore. And I think there's a couple parts of this equation. One of it is they legitimately have seen the emergence of Cole Henry, Brad Lord, Jackson Rutledge. I know the last couple of them is great for him. And there's a feeling of, you know what? The young guys are our best option right now for these high leverage spots. We're going to go with them over a veteran. But I think even beyond that, this is Davey Martinez and Mike Rizzo. This is now 3 veteran relievers that they signed in the offseason that are gone before June 1st. Lopez got $3 million. Lucas Sims got $3 million. Colin Poche got $1.4 million. The Nats are on the hook for all of that unless another team were to swoop in and claim Lopez off waivers, which I can't imagine will happen. By this team's standards, that's a lot of money to eat, especially this early in the year. I think that's Mike Rizzo and Davey Martinez as well saying, hey, guess what, guys? We're trying to win here now. We're not going to hold on for months. And just because we paid somebody money, it didn't work out. This guy is not helping the cause. And what kind of example is it for the young relievers to see this veteran who at the first sign of trouble kind of loses his mind and lets it affect him on the mound? I think there's a message being sent with this move in more ways than one. I don't think this is the kind of move they make in 2024, 2023, 2022. It's the kind of move they are making in 2025 because I do think they are trying to raise the bar here and say that more is expected.
Do you think there's any encouragement that should be taken from the fact that Mike Rizzo is being allowed to cut these veteran relievers with the Nats still owing them money? Like, could this maybe possibly be a sign that the Lerner ownership group is allowing Mike Rizzo to do some things that we have feared that he has not been allowed to do?
Right. And I don't know specifically, like, does he have to get their approval on every one of these kind of moves, or does he have the freedom to do it himself? I don't know the answer to that. But yes, I think it does speak to this idea of things are changing around here. They are more concerned right now about winning baseball games, trying to win as many games as they can this year. And it doesn't mean they're going to get there. And, you know, it's still going through this rebuild. But we just mentioned they had their first winning month now since August of 2023. That's a big deal They want to start establishing more of a winning culture for these young guys who have never experienced it before. And when you hang on to these struggling veterans who clearly are not part of the solution, and it's obvious to everybody else in the clubhouse that they're only here because they're being paid money and the team doesn't want to just eat that money, that's not the kind of message they want to send, I think, to their young core. So I do think there is a difference here in what's going on. We'll see where it all goes from here, but these are definitely the kind of moves that we did not see them make, certainly not this early in the season in recent years.
There are a few other things to me of Jorge Lopez being DFA'd too. Number one, man, Mike Rizzo had a really bad offseason when it came to putting together this bullpen. And this has been an Achilles heel for him for years. But good God, I mean, Sims, Poche, Lopez, all of these guys gone before the start of the month of June. I mean, let that sink in. That's one whiff after another. Jorge Lopez was supposed to be the eighth inning guy, and for a while was talked about as a closer before the team came to terms with Kyle Finnegan. You know, the Lopez signing ended up being a disaster. So I think we need to highlight that here. Like, this was a really bad offseason for Rizzo when it came to putting together the bullpen. Another thing is this, the timing of Lopez being DFA'd. So he has the bad outing on Thursday night. He lets his emotions get the better of him. Friday passes, and then Saturday we get the word that the Nats have DFA'd him. Did something happen here, do you think? Like, if it was just performance-based, wouldn't you have just DFA'd him right away off the game on Thursday night? You have an entire day that passes on Friday, and then the actual announcement of the transaction doesn't come until Saturday evening. Now, maybe that's because the Nats are out west, but the timing sort of struck me as it felt like there's more to this than just the performance. And when Davey Martinez said what he said to you guys prior to the game, Lopez was not the right fit here, it made it sound like, you know, was there a blow up behind the scenes? Was this just based on him getting overly emotional on Thursday night? This doesn't just seem about the bad performance. He's been bad for most of this season. This could have been done a while ago, but it wasn't done until now, and I wonder why.
My guess would be that what happened Thursday night in Seattle was sort of the final straw after a few of these kind of emotional outbursts. Now, why didn't it happen immediately? I don't know the answer to that, other than maybe that was a late night game. They knew they had a late flight to Phoenix, and you're not getting someone out here, you know, that quickly to try to make that move. So you go to Phoenix, you kind of get up the next day, you decide, okay, well, how are we going to proceed? Maybe the decision was made on Friday. You know, you have to kind of get the wheels in motion and get Eduardo Salazar from the East Coast to the West Coast. So it wasn't going to happen in time for the game. So you kind of keep Lopez, you know, on the active roster. But yeah, I think this had much more than performance, because think of it this way as well. Salazar is the only other viable pitcher on the 40-man roster that they could even call up. And it's not like he was doing better at AAA, but it's not like he had been down there long enough to have totally revamped himself and say, all right, let's get this guy up here who had like a 9 ERA when he was up here earlier in the season. So, and it left them shorthanded essentially in this game on Saturday. You know, Jorge Lopez, or at least a guy in that role, probably would have been pitching one of those late innings in what was a 4-run game. So they almost did this in spite of that it actually hurting the team in the short run. That does tell me that they had decided enough was enough for whatever reason it was to make that move. And it's not just about performance. It's about fit, as you said, or as Davey said. And I think just keeping in mind what the rest of the young pitchers on this team and the rest of the young guys on the team must have seen with their own eyes and what would be tolerated and what not tolerated with this team.
You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. Hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us too, natschatpodcast@gmail.com, including if you would like for us to deliver a shout out to someone who listens to the podcast, or a shout out for you to convey perhaps a message that you have that you want to deliver. And we have this shout out to give you from our good buddy Jack Fleury. Says Jack, how can we get this message to the learners? Extend James Wood. Does no one realize that Aaron Judge was an A-ball at 22? Wood is the successor to Mr. National. Whether we are in contention or not in 2025, Wood is the future and is priority number one right now. We all love every part of the Juan Soto trade, the likes of Gore, Abrams, Hassel, etc. But this guy, Wood, has to stay. With Scott Boras begging to wait for free agency, how in the world do we cement Wood's career in Washington? We've seen young stars come and go year after year, Mark and Dow. It's fun to talk about Wood game by game, but let's talk about the big picture and how the Nats can possibly make this happen. Beyond this, What do the Nats do when everything times up to sign all these guys at almost the same time? All of the true fans have bought into the rebuild, but how can we make the business side make sense? Thank you, Mark, Al, and Tim, for working late into the night to get these episodes out for the following morning after each game, especially during West Coast road trips. It really adds to the experience of following a team in real time and gives me and many others something to look forward to every morning. Thank you very much, Jack. You know, it's been interesting with how people are taking what the Nats are doing right now, because yes, there's a lot of excitement, but I am seeing a lot of this too of it doesn't matter because eventually James Wood will be gone and CJ Abrams will be gone and Mackenzie Gore will be gone. There's sort of this like defeatist attitude, but I get it, man. I do. I don't blame people like Jack for having the attitudes that those people have. I mean, look, we know the deal with James Wood. He's outstanding. His agent is Scott Boras. That makes him unlikely to sign one of these contract extensions that eat up arbitration years and free agency years. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. If there is going to be any chance of signing him to one of those extensions, you've got to come correct. You've got to give him a monster money offer. And the big question right now is Mike Rizzo allowed to make such an offer from ownership? And I just don't know how anyone can have the faith that Mike Rizzo is allowed to make such an offer. But yeah, I mean, you should try with James Wood, but we all know the deal here. It's not going to be easy. And even if the Nats do make a proper offer, it may still be that Wood says no.
There's a lot of scar tissue built up over the last decade, you know, with this franchise and for fans of it. And I completely understand why fans feel that way. They've seen time and again this happen with some of the best players in baseball. Like let's just consider the fact of how many of these true young superstars the Nationals have actually employed here over the years who've been in a position to now have to try to either be re-signed or end up going to free agency or, God forbid, in a few cases, have been traded before they get to that point. And I understand anybody who's fed up with it. And even though we're years away from this actually coming to reality, I can understand why people would be skeptical now and already worried about it. It's perfectly appropriate to feel that way. What I would say is the same thing I said with so many of the others who came before them. If it's up to Scott Boras, it doesn't matter what number you offer James Wood or any other one of his clients. He will always advise the guy to wait until free agency. Doesn't mean that he won't agree to re-sign at that point, but he will always advise, wait. You're going to be better off in the long run. The market's going to go up over time. If you bet on yourself, and as long as you stay healthy and become the player you're supposed to be, and you get 30 teams bidding on you, or more likely 3 or 4 teams, because that's how this works nowadays, you're going to end up making more money in the long run. And so really what this boils down to in the end is, yes, it's number one, the Nationals themselves making an offer that knocks your socks off and is not just a token offer that we've seen at times they've made here in the past with other guys. But really it boils down to this. Does James Wood want to be a National for life or not? That's really what it is. Now, the one advantage, maybe he grew up here. His family is all here. Maybe that is a selling point for him that can convince him when the time comes, whether it's within a year, 2 years, 3 years, whenever it is, and they make him some kind of offer that he says, you know what? I don't need to be the highest paid player in the game. I don't need to wait till free agency. Thanks for the advice, Scott, but I'd rather stay here and establish myself as a Washingtonian for the rest of my baseball career. Maybe that's how he will think. I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine he's even really thinking at age 22 how he wants to approach all of that. But that's what it takes. It's the agent is always going to push for waiting. And so it's up to the team to make an offer to try to convince a guy. And ultimately, it boils down to the player themselves. Do they want to stay? Does an offer of $500 million, whatever it is, at such a young age, is that enough to convince them to say, hey, you know what? I don't need to wait this all out. I'm very happy here. That's more money than I can ever imagine making. I'd rather stay here and get this taken care of now. That's what it boils down to in the end.
And you as an organization have to be proactive. The Nats have not been nearly proactive enough when it comes to pursuing these contract extensions. And that may be mostly due to Mike Rizzo not being allowed to be more proactive. It's important to understand this, too. James Wood is under team control through 2030. So we have some time here. It's entirely possible the Lerner family will not even be owning the Nats by the time we get supremely close to James Wood's free agency. Wood is represented by Scott Boras. Mackenzie Gore is represented by Scott Boras. C.J. Abrams is not. I mean, if you're thinking about who is a real candidate here for one of these contract extensions, Abrams may well be the target. You wonder if that might be something that actually happens. And I mentioned Mackenzie Gore. You know, Gore now is at the point that Juan Soto was at in terms of team control when the Nats traded Soto in August 2022. Again, Gore's a Boras guy, so I don't know how likely this is. I think it's much trickier with pitchers, too. But Mackenzie Gore, knock on wood, has demonstrated durability. He's obviously pitching at a high level. You wonder if those conversations are happening, if maybe the Nats are talking with Gore. For all the talk about James Wood, you have some time with Wood. Mackenzie Gore is under team control through 2027, so there is perhaps a bit of urgency, or at least there should be, with Mackenzie Gore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what people forget is that he was already in the big leagues before the trade happened. He spent a good chunk of that first year, including after the trade, on the IL. But he was accruing service time. And so even though he hasn't actually pitched for the Nationals as long, he's already into arbitration. And as you said, only 2 years to go after this one. It is crazy to think that he's already at this point at the same service time level that Juan Soto was the year that he was traded away. It doesn't feel like that's possible, but it is true. Yeah, in all of the cases, yes, if you're the team, you make an effort. You make a real effort. I don't know. I don't think any of us really know how hard they go after this stuff early on, what kind of offers they make. They've done a pretty good job over the years of not letting that kind of stuff get out. Now, maybe it's because they're not making offers they want to get out there, but I know there at least are some conversations to some extent. And you're right about Gore. You're right about Abrams, the fact that he's not a Boras client. But I'll kind of go back to what I said for all those years with the previous generation. I think a lot of fans could live with losing some of these others if you somehow keep the big fish. Let's be honest here. James Wood is the big fish. He's the full package. He's the likely superstar who is from the area. That, to me, would be the one to go all in on, just like I thought at the time Juan Soto was the one to go all in on.
Well, in the meantime, the Nats have a 4-game winning streak. The Nats are 28-30, and the Nats on Sunday afternoon are going for a 3-game sweep at the Arizona Diamondbacks. Game 3 of this series, 4:10 on Sunday afternoon. Mitchell Parker will be the Nats starting pitcher. And oh, by the way, the Nats are 5 games behind the St. Louis Cardinals for the National League's 3rd and final wildcard spot. Let that sink in as you continue along here with your weekend. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can hit us up on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Dalen Lyle stands in against Scott McGough. First pitch in for a strike. Second pitch, swung on it, drilled to deep center field. Way back, this one may go. It is off the wall, in play for now. Coming in to score is Tana. Into second is Dalen Lyle. And so it is a double for Dalen Lyle, his second 2-base hit, his second run batted in on the second pitch from Scott McGough. And it's now the Nationals 8 and the Diamondbacks nothing.